Today we're going to progress from doing gesture drawing of the skeletal structure to now thinking of it in terms of three-dimensional achievement. So we're going to introduce the concept of cubes. So what I have here is a cube-like form representing the rib cage, a cube-like form representing the pelvis, and it's really beneficial to think of the movement of the thoracic cage. One of the great things about our vertebral column is our ability to twist and turn and to move forward and backwards. So we have this capacity. We have the ability to tilt down. We have the ability to turn to the side. We have the ability to turn to the other side. We have the ability to lean back. We also have the ability to twist and lean forward, twist the other way, lean forward. We can twist and lean back. We can twist and lean back. So there's an infinite variety of possibilities with the human skeletal structure. So it really makes it much easier to think in terms of cubes when you're starting to add the muscle structure, and in particular to introduce shading of this form. So right now what I have is we have the thoracic cage, and as you can see, it is facing this angle, and the pelvis is facing this angle. So we have this, and if we were to tilt it forward, it could come down, but right now it's more upright. And if we see the side plane through here, we can probably see the side plane for the pelvis. And if you were shading this, you can clearly see what's going to fall into shadow and what would have light on it. So this is definitely helpful for giving something a real solid three-dimensional form. And once you have these cubes broken down, you can then add the anatomical structure on top of this. So you'd want to do this part lightly. Think of all your lights and darks and the shading and so forth. And then you can gradually add your anatomical structure. So this is what the thoracic cage and pelvis would look like from this view. And we'll twist this a couple more times so you can also see what it would be like in different views. So now we're going to have a look and see what it's like with the thoracic cage tilted back and as if you were looking up. And right now we can see the light really lands on this top plane of the rib cage. And the pelvis is turned the other way. So we have this idea. So remember, we can turn different ways. Lean backwards, lean forward. In this particular case, now we have the thoracic cage leaning back, the pelvis turned to the side, and you can now see the different planes, and this would be very helpful for the shading principles. You can see the light up here falls on top, and this side plane is absent of light and it falls into darkness. Same with the pelvis. We have light on the top of the pelvis, light on the front, but this side plane will fall into shadow. And that shows, can be very helpful when you have something that's turned in a difficult angle. This is a very challenging angle to draw, and this is a very helpful procedure to think and keep that in mind. So again, it's using cubes to do the gesture drawing of the skeletal figure. So now we'll look at the skeletal view here in posterior view. So we can now see that the rib cage is tilted forward. We now see the back, we see the vertebral column, we see light shining on the back, and the pelvis is turned this way, so it's collapsed. So if you notice, this is closer together, this is now greatly expanded. So if it's twisted and turning, one side is going to become closer, the other side's going to have a larger space. So it looks a bit like this. So we now can see the top plane, the bottom plane, and a little bit of the side plane here falling in shadow, and the pelvis is turned the other way. So they're not stiff. We have flexibility, we have movement, and now we have the twisting and turning of the vertebral column, and you can see the cube-like forms. Keeping this in mind, it'll be very helpful for drawing the human figure, and for right now, especially helpful for drawing the skeletal structure. One thing that's really nice about this and to keep in mind is you can put the arms in any position you want. You can turn this out here. The rib cage and pelvis will pretty much stay in that same location. When I draw the human figure, it took me a few years to get this down, but I always look, the first thing I do when I draw the human figure is I always look for the rib cage and the pelvis. Some people like to start with the head, some people start with the legs, some people start with the arms. For me personally, I feel it's always in your best interest to start with the thoracic cage and then start with the pelvis, because the extremities and so forth can be moved and changed into any position you want. Having a great understanding of this and using these cube-like forms is very beneficial for effectively trying to convey three-dimensional achievement when drawing the human form. So now we'll be doing just a quick little demo on gesture drawing of the human skeleton, but we'll be using cube-like shapes to help with determine the three-dimensional form. So to begin with, let's see, we'll just start with a cube. It's a little bit longer than it is tall. And so we'll have the rib, this will represent the rib cage, and then we'll have the pelvis turn just a little bit. So we're gonna have it pinched in. And we can have the limb, we'll say that we'll have the limb coming out this way. And maybe we'll have this foot pushed off in here. We can always change that if we need to. So make sure you keep your drawings light, so if we need to make changes, it's easy to do so. Then we'll have this extending out this way. Up in here, we'll have an arm gesture coming through here. And let's raise the other arm up, maybe a little bit. And the back of the neck, and we'll have an indication of a head. And the vertebral column will come in here. So now we'll go ahead and make this cube-like. We'll add this plane. So that we can see the top section. Then we see the side, and we see the bottom. And we'll have a little bit thicker connection here. And then the pelvis. Remember that we want to have the space in here a little narrower because it's pinched and it's a little wider through here. We don't want to have too big of a gap between the rib cage and the pelvis. They're generally the same width, the rib cage and the pelvis. So we'll keep it more or less that way. And let's show, actually let's show a little bit of the side plane on this side. So we'll have it turned a little more, and maybe we see the bottom plane. And for the legs, we'll have the head of the femur, the great trochanter, and it gets narrower through the middle, thicker as it gets to the end. Then we will add in here the tibia and the fibula, an indication of the foot, and have it kind of pushing off. And then let's add the other leg in here. So we have the femur, and then the tibia and fibula, and we'll also have this push foot really kind of pushing off, so we have more movement, a little more dynamic movement. And then we add the neck, the back of the neck, and an indication of the head. And here we'll add the humerus at the top of the thoracic cage. And then humerus here, radius and ulna, and just a little gesture of a hand. And then since we're doing cubes, maybe let's see here, we can just for fun, we'll have this give an indication that he's stepping on a block, and we can have another one in here. And we'll keep this nice and light, so if we wanted to make changes to it later, we can. And then, so let's add another figure in here. Maybe we have, let's have a front view figure. We'll kind of put that in here. And let's turn it slightly to the side. And then we'll have the pelvis turned this way. And we'll have those arms going up, and we'll can have the head turn looking up. So once we kind of get it figured out maybe what we'd like to do here, we'll try to make it a little bit more representational. So we want to have the side plane. Might see a little bit of the bottom plane in there. Then we're going to connect the rib cage to the pelvis. And show a side plane here. And we'll have the femur coming out in there. Remember, it gets narrower in the shaft and thicker when it gets to the joints. So if you notice, I'm keeping it nice and light, so if I need to make changes, I easily can. And I'm going to have this leg going behind. Have it kind of behind in the crevice. So it's sort of emerging up out of that shape. And then humerus. And radius and ulna. Just a quick indication of a hand. So now we have a couple of figures in there. Now maybe, I feel like it might be kind of fun to have something else emerging out of here. So let's kind of have it placed maybe just a little bit behind. So here we go with the rib cage, and maybe we see a little bit of the front plane, a little bit of the top plane, and then a connection here in the pelvis. And we'll have that leg coming back here. Let's have this other leg coming out here. And actually we'll have it back in there. So now we're going to have the great trochanter, the femur, and then the fibula and tibia, and this foot back in here. And we had this femur in here. Thinner in the middle, the shaft gets bigger. And the wedge shape of the foot. And we'll have this arm coming back and down in here. We'll have the other arm coming out. Maybe you could be pointing at something. And give them a little indication of a head. And we could have him stepping on a block as well, so he's standing on a surface. And kind of continue with our theme of the cubes. And actually, let's for compositional purposes, let's have another cube coming up out of here. And we can have another cube-like shape coming from here. Maybe and if we keep this light, we can make lots of changes as we go. So it might be more interesting to have that go behind, a little further up here, so we have a little bit more movement. And this one, I think, might be more exciting if we make that a little wider as well. And now let's add another figure. I think we need something now coming in, maybe this way, to give it a little more rhythm. So let's turn, maybe have another back view figure. So we'll have this rib cage in here, and we'll have the pelvis pinched in and turned slightly. So we want to have that open area here. It's closed in here because it's turned and bent. And we can see the side plane. And then the side plane here. And femur. Tibia, fibula. Then we'll have the see the bottom of the foot in here. So he's kind of floating in space. Bottom of the foot there. This arm can be sort of reaching up. We'll have this arm reaching back. And we'll have the head looking up in that area. A little thicker. See a little bit of the bottom of there. A little thicker vertebral column. Medial epicondyle, then the radius and ulna, gesture of a hand, pelvis, and let's add one more figure so we can have 5 in here. So maybe emerging out of here. Let's just have a front view and arms out. Connect the thoracic cage in the pelvis with the vertebral column. And let's get our cube in here, and we'll show a side plane. And we'll have the femur in here, and the other femur coming down in here. Kind of a suspended figure in space. And see just a little bit of that side of the rib cage and the neck, and we'll have the head turned down. We'll do the head a little bit more as an egg-shaped oval. Then we have the humerus. So we have the head of the humerus in there. And little gesture of a hand. Then we can add the other humerus in here. gesture of a hand in there. With this foot going behind in there. See a little bit of the top plane of this pelvis. Patella. Now we can kind of take these planes and make them a little bit more, even though they're cubes, if we make them a little more jagged, it's a little more interesting. So you can take the idea of a cube, but now start to make it look like a little bit more like it could be a rock. Something a little more organic. And we'll just kind of have that fade out in here. And I'll have kind of a big column in here. Sort of aged and weathered. So I was sort of thinking a little bit about design elements, but coming up with an idea, concept using cubes. So you can see here we've got things flowing in, things flowing in through here. We have the cubes, so you can start to get a sense of where the side planes would be. Having this understanding of planes and making things look three-dimensional is very helpful. And let's see, we'll make this a little longer to make it a little more dramatic. We can keep making changes in here as we go. So what I'll do is I'll spend a little time working on shading, and I'll do that in a time lapse so you don't have to watch the whole section of it, or you can see the process happen much quicker anyway. But this is the general idea. So we have top plane, side plane. So if we were going to have light come from above, that very quickly, just to give a little indication, that would have a tone. This would have a tone. This would have a tone. There'd be a little bit of a cast shadow onto the vertebral column underneath. the light's coming from above. So remember, everything that goes under has a tone. So we have that as a tone. This side plane is going to have a tone. This bottom plane is going to have a tone. This side plane is going to have a tone. This side plane. And this bottom plane is going to have a tone. And I'll more carefully go do a shading just so you can see all this. And as you can see here, this pencil's starting to get a little bit dull. And that's why I always keep a whole cluster of ready pencils ready so I can just grab another one. So I'm just going to grab another one here. So I want the light coming on this column on the top. So this side plane, I'll very quickly just give an indication of a tone. And then the same here with this side plane here, it's going to have a tone. All right, the side plane here, this bottom plane is going to have a tone. And you can see we're starting to get a little bit of a compositional design going on. Side plane in here will have a tone. And we can clean a lot of this up as we go. The shading will take care of a lot of it. And this is going to have a side plane. This is going to go under. And so it's starting to come together. We've got 5 figures included in here. These are all cube-like figures, and even the elements that we're using in the background. In fact, let's have this kind of come in here so that we have a line through there. It's a little more interesting, and this will go behind. This will come forward. We want to have distinct edge here, so that's going to have a tone. This will have a tone. This will have a tone. We're going to have this figure come behind, go into the space behind. And we'll start cleaning this up as we go, and I'll do that in a time lapse. Gesture drawing, using cubes. This was completely just drawn up spontaneously with no pre-planned or preconceived ideas. And sometimes these work out, sometimes they don't. We'll try to spend a little bit more time on it, shading it, trying to polish it up a little bit so that you can see the end result and what the possibilities are. Using the cubes to design figures makes it much easier to draw from memory and come up with different ideas. Drawing the human figure with a cube.